If you happen to find yourself in a position where you accidentally started your file at the wrong scale, and you're not in the habit of using the tick marks or the apostrophes to do 24 feet instead of 24 millimeters, which currently, because it says millimeters down here in the bottom left, is my base unit. I made a box. I typed in 24, 24, 24. You can see it right here. 24, 24, and then 24. So I didn't do a tick mark, so that means that my box, because I'm set to millimeters, came out to be 24 millimeters high. And it'll tell me that when I type in distance, and with object snap on end, I go from one point to the other, it says 24.000 millimeters. So I'll get you set up with a laptop in a sec. So because it says millimeters, that means I have to change the scale of my file. So it's pretty simple. You don't have to automatically scale the model. If it's just a unit problem in how you initially set up the file, all you have to do is just change the units, and it asks you whether or not you want to scale the file with it. So if I type in units, it brings us back to the very familiar, there it is, the very familiar page that I introduced. It was the first thing we did, where we changed from millimeters to feet. So if I change directly from millimeters to feet, that means that I can say, yes, please scale it, and it will go immediately to feet. If I change it from millimeters to inches, my 24 millimeter model will scale up to 24 inches instead of 24 feet. So then you will have to scale, and it depends on, you will have to scale the model, but it depends on what you want to work in versus what you've given it. So if I switch my model units to feet, and I'm going to go back here to feet and inches so it reads properly, and hit OK, this is what it asks me. That the units changed from millimeter to foot and scale model by however much, and I say yes, and then my model disappears. So what we do know is that if you look at the bottom left, it's now set to feet, which is correct. That's what I want to work in. I want to work in feet. But I can't find my model at all. So if you happen to find yourself completely lost like this, and you can't find, either you accidentally scaled too much, or scaled in too close, there's a good shortcut that you should all be aware of. And even if you don't need to practice it right now, write it down. It's called Zoom Select, and the shortcut for it is ZS. And it'll ask you, if I type in ZS and hit enter, it'll tell me no objects are selected, so it doesn't know what to zoom to, right? Because it's called Zoom Select. So this command, when you have an object selected, it will zoom to scale that view down to fit, not scale the model, the view. It'll zoom in the view around any object that is selected. So you do select all, or sorry, cell all, SELALL, for select all. And it tells me that it added 5 surfaces to the selection. Right now mine's exploded into individual surfaces, but yours might just say one poly surface or 6 poly surfaces, depending on how many negatives you have. So with it selected, I type in ZS and hit enter. And that zooms my model into that view. Actually, I don't think it scaled correctly. It didn't. Why didn't it? Should have. Anyway, I'll play around with that in a second. But so if you have your object or model selected and you can't see it in another view, or if it looks really, really small and you don't feel like zooming all the way into it, or if it's really, really big, you can do that in all the other views. The key is don't deselect the model when you switch over to the other view. So if I have it selected in my top view like this, and I click into the perspective view to activate it, you see that it deselects it. So you want to select it and either do one of two things. You can click on the perspective view title and it'll activate that view, and then you do zoom select, or you just zoom in or out real quick when you mouse over another view. That activates it as well. Type in ZS, ZS, and ZS, and it brings it up in all the other views. So real quick though, I want to figure out why my scaling got all screwy. So let me go back to this. I'm back in millimeters. ZS, distance. I might have told you the instructions backwards for this. So 24 millimeters. Let me scale up to feet. It should go. Unit settings. Let's switch it to feet. Feet and inches. Hit OK. Nope. Okay, sorry. I told you guys the backwards. So I explained it backwards. When you change your units, what it's asking you to do is it's asking you if you want to scale it down to match the original size. So I always understand that backwards. I think I explain it the wrong way every single time I do this. But what you want to say is, no, I don't want to scale it. I want my units to switch in the scale that they are. So 1 millimeter will immediately switch to 1 foot instead, rather than taking the model and scaling it down to the new 1 millimeter. That's what it's saying. Okay, so that's just another quick tip for you if you happen to set up your file incorrectly. What I do want to do is verify that all of you are working in feet, that your model is the correct size, and then we'll move on to some other stuff a little bit later on once we've gotten through some refresher exercises here. Are there any questions right now?
Can you repeat that? So you said switch units and scale it as rather than
Yes,
the model?
I will explain that. So when I say, what I was confused about is that I thought initially that it was asking me to take, to scale my model from 24 millimeters up to 24 feet. That's not what it's asking. What it is asking you to do, it's saying scale your model down so that 1 millimeter at your 1 millimeter scale is the same as 1 millimeter in your 1 foot scale. So it'll take your 24 millimeter model in the millimeter scale and it'll keep it at 24 millimeters when you scale your size up to 24 feet. Does that make sense? Was that clearer? Yeah, it's either going to keep it proportional to the units that you're working in, or it's not. So you want it to keep it proportional, so you say no. That's probably why it confuses me so much too, because I can't quite explain it all that clearly. All right.